Come on, man.
Hey guys.
It's just a pineapple.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Here at the Swamp, get ready to beat LSU. Y'all tune in to Rule Number 1 podcast on Monday.
And we are back, episode 47. Man, we are sorry to everybody out there. We kind of took a little break from the show for a couple weeks just to kind of, get our things in order for year number 2.
I know we're super excited to be able to. We kind of took 2 weeks off to kind of reboot, revamp, get a new game plan, and keep making this thing grow. But I think we've got a couple really cool guests scheduled out. A couple really cool people, local people. Some people, might be in a different state. But y'all will find that out soon enough.
Later.
But this episode, we have a very important guest. We have Nicole Riley, and she is the marketing and
development coordinator
for Inheritance of a Hope. So welcome on, Nicole.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So do you want to explain a little bit what that title is or what it entails?
Yeah, so I'm the marketing and development coordinator for our Hope at Home groups for Inheritance of Hope. And a huge part of my role is really getting out and connecting with, well, first of all, Inheritance of Hope is an organization that serves young families who have a parent who's been diagnosed with a terminal illness. So, and their children are young. So I think our requirements, I guess, if you will, or for serving families are those, they have to have received a terminal diagnosis, and the youngest child in their home is 18 years of age and younger. So really those young families, and we offer a variety of different services, but most specifically my role is really talking about our Hope at Home groups, which are virtual support groups for these families, to be able to have a community where they can come and be able to walk through and meet with other families who are walking through what they're walking through. We have support services for kids where that can come just specifically for a kids group who have a parent who's walking through a terminal diagnosis, young adults, teens, and then even spouses that are in families that are living with illness currently and undergoing treatment. And then we have groups for life after loss for those who have lost their spouse to terminal illness.
And that's really, I don't want to say that's cool, but that's a cool thing that you're doing, because that's very hard for people to interact when you hear that, so-and-so's got terminal cancer or terminal disease. It's a culture. It's kind of a culture shock. You're world shocked at that point. And having a group of people that can actually reach out and talk to these individuals that are affected by this, and get them through it, man, that's awesome. That is really awesome what you're doing. Big thing that we do here on the Rule 1 podcast is we ask all of our guests what their number one rule is to live by. I'm really interested to hear yours, especially in this line of work.
Yeah, so mine ties in probably a lot to my story and then and now to what I do. But so what I do now is really tied into a big part of what's impacted mine and Nathan's life. And our dad actually passed away to cancer almost 11 years ago now, really, which is crazy to think about. And one thing he said over and over before he passed was, when he was sick, was stop, reflect, and think about what's most important in life. And I just... Since his passing, that has just been the one thing that continues to cycle and repeat in my mind, is just stop and reflect and think about what's most important, what's really important here in the stressful part of my day, or how might I live life in that way, to where we can get so caught up in the day to day or the little frustrations, but what's really important here? Like what really matters. So I would say that that's probably the biggest rule that I've really come to live by, and how I discern the day in and day out of life.
Yeah, it's kind of pretty cool. Obviously, I don't think I introduced Nicole as one of my sisters.
Sorry,
it's fine.
But no, it's fine. Some of y'all have listened to Aubrey Gordon's episode, the cosmetologist. She's as well as my sister, and it's kind of cool to hear their different perspectives of things that my dad said, and both of them use something as number one rule. It's kind of cool because Aubrey's was make it count, and yours is stop and reflect and think what's most important. And for me, one thing that always stuck with me was he always told me, he was like, you can control two things in life, son. It's your attitude and your effort. And that's about anything you can control. Anything else, it kind of just goes out the window, so quit worrying about it. But it's kind of cool how his vision and his and leadership to our lives have showed us different aspects of each personality, really.
I think it's really neat how siblings can just be like different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You grow up in the same environment, you have the same parents, you do the same things. Like me and my brother lived together in the same room for 18 years. And me and him could not be more opposite, like more bipolar opposite. It's so funny how that happens with siblings and growing up. But it's really cool the influence that your dad has had on all three of y'all. I've met the whole family now. And to hear each one of y'all talk about him in such high respect, I really wish I could have met him. You know, like, especially with Nate being my best friend, to see where it comes from. Like, he's met my dad. He sees kind of where my energy comes from and my background comes from. But it's really cool to see y'all keeping his legacy going and keeping his words alive, too.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's kind of funny. I think it was yesterday or the day before, we were all talking about how I perceived each one of my sisters, and I have three of them. I don't know if you've met Savannah or not. She lives up in Charleston, but we'll have to.
Okay, I got one more to check off. I got one to check off.
I was about to say we might have to get her on the podcast too. So had the whole trio. But along the same lines as what you were saying, we were all looking at each other and they're like, so how do you perceive each one of your siblings? And me and Savannah are very much similar, like my dad, in terms of personality, and Nicole and Aubrey are very similar to my mom in terms of, very sweet, loving, caring. Not that I'm not, but me and Savannah are a little bit more rough around the edges. Like, we're kind of saying how it is.
You're just more direct.
Yes.
And that's not a bad thing at all. No.
But it's pretty cool. Do you want to talk a little bit about, with Inheritance of Hope, how you got into that? I know you've done some other nonprofit work, and kind of your journey up into the point of getting this job.
Yeah, sure. So, and kind of tying in my rule to live by in life, it kind of plays a role into that story too. So, I'm also almost 10 years older than Nate too. So I'm the oldest and he's the baby. And so it's been fun to kind of see just our journeys, how alike but different they've been. I went to USF. I'm a USF grad, and I graduated with a degree in mass communications.
Oh, same. Sport communications.
Awesome.
But I want to go to USF and get my master's in mass communications.
So there you go.
Is it worth it?
Yeah, I loved it.
Okay.
I absolutely loved it. My focus was on public relations.
All right.
And super thankful to have stayed in that line of work. I actually started as a nursing major when I went to school.
I remember that.
And yes, and
a nursing major that was scared of blood.
I was not scared of blood. No, it was the microbiology that I'm like, oh, no, peace out, I'm done. I can't do all this science. So, and it was about that time, I went through my first full year as a nursing major, and then switched completely to mass comm, which could not be more opposite from nursing.
I agree with that.
But I had a heart for health and just, and that knowledge and being able to learn a little bit about that. And so that plays a role. So when I switched to public relations, I actually got plugged into a group that was focused on young public relations professionals, and they matched you with individuals in the field that were PR professionals to see if you'd be interested in that route. And one of the groups my PR professional I got matched with was the communications director, the PR person for Tampa General Hospital.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I got to shadow him for the day and got to walk around to see, like, okay, there's a way to tie in communications with health that is where I don't have to be doing the one-on-one health stuff, that I can still be in the field. And so that just fueled my fire. When I graduated, I worked for a small nonprofit, a pregnancy clinic, and did that for about 1.5 years, and then actually got a job with the Department of Health, where I served as their spokesperson up until...
And that was with Polk County, correct?
That was with Polk County Department of Health, and I served there for about 7 years, I think, right at 7 years, and COVID hit. And so I was
her face when she said that.
The lead spokesperson for the local Department of Health during COVID. And if you want to talk about...
But you got some hate.
I got a ton. Yes, the department as a whole. Yeah. And it was the most grueling experience I have ever gone through. It was like none other. I was not prepared for it at all. But I look back at that time and what I had to go through, and it also kind of built a lot of who I was and a lot of pushing through trials. And it just, we went in, I probably worked through COVID for the first year, because I think I finally left in the fall of 2021. And there was one day I was working with a reporter, and my daughter was home sick from school. And we're a year into this at this point. Like you said, we're getting a lot of hate, and we're working with a lot of reporters that are really trying to make a story out of something.
Push a narrative.
Yeah,
They're trying to, that's exactly what the whole thing kind of was.
And so they would ask you a line of questioning that was trying to get you to respond to that line of questioning. And I was so angry with this reporter, and my little daughter was home And we just had this moment where I snapped. She was coming in while I was on the phone and was really upset. She was sick. She was homesick. And I just lost it. The pressure had built, and I hung up the phone. And it kind of chokes me up still to this day. Like, I started crying because I'm like, this is not worth it. That stop, reflect, and think about what's most important. Like, this is not what's most important. My daughter is most important. And right in this moment, I had to respond to a work call when I'm supposed to be off. I'm not supposed to be working. I'm supposed to be home with my daughter. And it just wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it. And so it forced me to kind of pivot and change gears. And I left there and went and worked for the same nonprofit that I actually started working with right after college. Worked there for another probably year and a half. And it wasn't until I think it was the start of this year. I don't know, going into this year, I felt like, okay, there just feels like there's a change of season in the air, like that might be coming in. I was on Facebook, was not looking for a new job, wasn't really looking to make any changes, and saw on Facebook, one of my now coworker managers had posted that they were trying to hire for a marketing and development position. And I'm like, I even sent it to my husband with like the thinking face emoji. Like, he's like, well, check it out and see. And I looked into it, and it had like marketing credentials, and it was working for this organization who served our family when my dad was sick. And I thought, wow, like this
Full circle.
Complete full circle. Like, this makes this, I know the impact that this organization makes. I know that this is a degree to background that I have where I feel like I could serve and plug in. And I don't think I could have done it any sooner, just given grieving and learning and growing that we've done after losing our dad. And within a couple of weeks, like I put that I was interested and applied and got hired on. And so now
Such
I
a
get to do this.
good story. I didn't know you worked at the health department.
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen anything in this country in modern times divide people like COVID did.
Yeah.
I never seen anything that caused turmoil between people that, were actually friends 2 weeks ago, but one doesn't want to wear a mask and the other one does, and then they're arguing and screaming at each other, on Facebook, Twitter, whatever it is nowadays. And like, it's just so mind boggling, but you having to be on that inside and having to work with that happening, like, I can't imagine the stress and like the comments that you got. And like you said, the reporter trying to trip you up with the narrative, because it was a big narrative back then.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know what to believe in. You still kind of don't with it.
I think the big issue with that whole deal was they used it and made it political.
Yes, very political.
And made one side or the other. You have to, if you're Republican or conservative, you have to think this way. And if you're a Democrat or liberal, you think this way. And I think the problem with it is they made it all political, and then it just divided the whole thing instead of actually focusing on the health of the citizens of this country.
I think that, go ahead. No.
Well, and I think the local health department's focus was really towards the health of the community. And, in working in state government, you have different initiatives that are pushed down.
Yeah, different influences.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think that's also what was incredibly frustrating, is like, you can see the science behind some things, but then also like there's practicality in others. And it just was such a divided force, and it was like, I cannot do this anymore. I
kind of navigated the whole like cloud of COVID, that 2020 year and that 2021 year, using common sense, right? Mm-hmm. I was always thinking to myself, we know we haven't talked about this much because it's been a hot topic since, but like the vaccines, right? I mean, I hate to even get into it, but like, when I think of a vaccine, I think of the polio vaccine, or I think of like, the smallpox vaccine, something that stops it in its tracks. Like, you are not going to get it again. It's done. And, I was sitting there, the vaccine's coming out 2 months time after this disease hit the world. I'm like, man, that's pretty quick for a vaccine to get put out in the world and everything. I was just like, I'm not going to take it. I got backlash from my family, from friends, all over the place, because I didn't want to get a shot in my arm. And then, the next thing you know is like, you can still get the disease with the shot. I'm like, yeah, well, then why would I get it? Why am I taking it? Like, it's so crazy. Like he said, it turned so political and split this country in half. And I finally feel like People are starting to get back over it now, but we have another election cycle coming up. So who knows what the next, it's going to be COVID-20, and then we're going to be right back in the same thing. Mail-in ballots, people screaming at each other with masks and not masks. Get the shot, don't get the shot. I'm not looking forward to it, guys.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a mess.
And I think so much of it deep down is driven by fear. I mean,
Yes.
we have loved ones we know people who died from COVID, and then others who had serious health impacts from that. And I think at the root of it all, whichever decision people made, it was driven by so much fear. And so, I hate that it was so divisive, but also, there was a lot to be learned from it. I look back on that season, and like without that, it wouldn't have pushed me to make certain decisions, whether it be career changes or just look at life completely different, or have, the guts to step out and do something that I may not have done otherwise.
Yeah. It pushed you towards that. It got that's good though. I mean, a lot of people have had negative influences through that process with COVID, and a lot of people had beneficial influences. Like some people used the shutdown to grow their, online presence or their stuff out in the world, and they succeeded. And some people lost everything. Small businesses lost everything. But I'm glad to see that had a positive influence on you. You got out of that kind of politicalized health science world. Now you're actually working with people that, they're getting affected by real, diseases. Real stuff. This is hard on people, and you're actually helping them rather than just trying to, all right, I really don't know what to do here. I got the right side telling me this, left side telling me this. I'm working for the state here in Polk County. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
It's easy. It's easier.
It's so much. There's more heart to it.
Yes.
And we're really able to serve directly individuals who are directly impacted. And given the background, I've walked that road. We've walked that road, and knowing what that feels like. And so to be able to. There's a quote that I love that I heard from one of a trainer that I follow, and he said, "Reflection is the fertilizer for growth."
Oh, I like that.
I love it. Reflection is the fertilizer for growth, and so it's allowed. We've walked through a really challenging season, and now 10, almost 11 years removed from that, we're able to reflect on that and grow from really hard seasons to then be able to be more purposeful and being able to serve and help others who are walking that same road.
Yeah, you mentioned that we were a result of some of the resources that the company that you work for provides. Do you want to go in a little bit about how, I was very young whenever it happened and we got to go on that trip and everything. Do you want to explain a little bit of what those trips look like and explain how we were contacted as a family?
Yes. So Nathan and I, our family was served. Our dad, for those who may not know, our dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2011. But actually, it was 2010, I think. Oh. And he was diagnosed and then passed in October of 2012. And so in that time, when he received his diagnosis, we had a family friend that actually knew about Inheritance of Hope. And Inheritance of Hope was actually started by a young couple whose wife was diagnosed with a terminal cancer as well. And they had 3 very young kids. And they looked and searched to try to find resources for their family, and there were none. There was nothing to be able to support them. There are organizations that serve kids that have cancer or, maybe other illness-related things, but nothing specifically for young families, to provide them with resources for how can we go through this as a married couple, but then also how can we support our kids walking through this, because they're grieving and they're hurting too. And so they started Inheritance of Hope. And so when we were able to go on the retreat, in the early years, they offered what they called legacy retreats, which were these weekend retreats in different cities. Orlando, Disney was one of them, and then New York at the time was also one of them. And we had the opportunity to go to New York City with our family and have just a weekend of community, of other families who were walking the same road we were walking. And so not only did we get to have a trip to build memories with one another as a family, but we also had others who were pouring into us and being able to walk us through maybe some of what we were feeling and what we were going through and how we were navigating that. And so we didn't feel so alone. And so for a while, Inheritance of Hope really just offered these retreats, which are phenomenal and wonderful. We still offer those retreats to this day. But through a change and through as the organization grew and developed, they saw a need to branch out those services. And then actually a huge catapult for that was COVID. So when you have other families and other individuals who have a terminal diagnosis and cannot go out and cannot be face-to-face with people, they couldn't go on these retreats that they offered. And so they started opening up virtual options. So instead of that particular year of COVID, instead of offering a legacy retreat, they decided to open what they call a Hope at Home weekend. And so it was like a virtual version of a retreat. And so they got on their Zoom screens. We sent packages to families so that they could experience the love of a retreat, but from the comfort of their home and the safety of their home for those who couldn't get out. And so as COVID kind of went through and passed, it was like, okay, there's something here. Like there's an avenue that we can tap into to serve more families and expand what we offer. And so from that, they actually grew Hope at Home groups, which are weekly virtual support groups that serve. We have I think 5 to 7 groups that meet. We have a teens group, a young kids group, a teens group, a young adult group, and then a living with illness or like a diagnosis specific group. So like we have a group that's metastatic breast cancer for those who are specifically walking that road. We also have a group for I think GBM, which is glioblastoma, I believe. Anyways, so diagnosis specific. And then we have groups that are life after loss groups. So for parents and for kids who have lost that loved one to cancer and how they're navigating the road then after loss. And so what these Hope at Home groups did was it opened up a whole new window for us to be able, like when we went on our retreat, it was like, I still remember talking to my manager today. It was like a waving bye, like, okay, oh my gosh, we got to serve this family, we got to stay connected, but it was like, bye, see you later. And there was a little bit of connection afterwards, but there was nothing really further from that. And so Hope at Home groups really provided an avenue to be able to stay connected with families and to really serve them. And I tell them this often now that I'm working in this group. It's like, man, I wish we had the kids group going, like, because Nathan and I are 10 years apart. So like even for Nathan and my younger sister, or for us, the young adult group, or for my mom who is experiencing life after loss, like now seeing what we offer, I just love that we've grown to be able to serve families in that way.
Sounds like you're building a support network.
Yes.
Right. I don't want to get like y'all emotional here, but was your dad still with y'all when y'all went to New York, or was he?
Yes.
He was still. So that's really cool too, because I was going to make the point, like you're bringing these people together that have these terminal illnesses, right? And it's a way that these people can talk to one another that are diagnosed. Like, hey man, how are you dealing with it? Hey man, like what are you thinking? Like your plan's going to be if the worst comes to worst. Like it's really cool to think that you're bringing these like-minded individuals that are in the same exact kind of scenario, and they're able to kind of share like, hey, I'm getting through it by doing this, or hey, I'm getting through it by doing this and setting this up. And that's so cool. Like that's a really big thing that you're doing for families.
Well, and we had such a wonderful support network, like from our church and family friends, but there's something to be said to also have a group of people who are walking that same road and know the feelings that you're feeling without even having to name them. And so we talk about it a lot. We offer a community that gets it, that has gone through that and feels that. And I think that's what's so special to now serve in this role is having walked that and having been served by this organization and then coming full circle to be able to offer that to somebody else.
And you could tell people that you get it too, because you've been there, and you can always tell them your experience, like, hey, I know it's always going to be there that you lost this individual, and you're always going to miss them. But, you can always explain to them like, hey, it'll be okay. Like you can keep moving on. You can keep learning, and you can keep him alive by, telling his rules that you've learned from him, or, tell stories that I hear stories from Nate all the time about his dad, and it cracks me up. Some of the ones that he tells me about.
Oh, he was a hoot. I mean, if you ever also want to know what it's just really cool too, because you may not remember or see as much, but Nathan is like the walking image of our dad.
I've seen a picture of him. I'm like, yo, I don't know why, I'm talking to the guy right here. It's the same thing.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm very much of a spitting image of my dad, and we have a lot of characteristics that we're very similar to.
Yeah.
But what's also cool about the retreats is you get to go and you get to connect with other families that it relate exactly to what you're going through. But also, I mean, you've got Orlando at Disney World, and then for us as Florida people, we had the opportunity to go to New York, and be able to connect with those people and go to your little sessions. I think I was 10 or 11 whenever we went, so it's a little fuzzy for me to remember, but I do remember going down, the streets of New York City and being able to see all that as an 11-year-old or however old I was. And then on top of that, we did it during Thanksgiving, so we had the opportunity to watch live the Macy's Day Parade. And so, I'm sitting there, 11 years old and seeing, SpongeBob 1,000 feet ahead.
Spider-Man crawling through the city of New York.
I mean, it's just an awesome experience, and being able to do that for a kid that, all they think about is, I hope dad's going to make it out or mom's going to make it out, and being able to have that and being like, man, I'm getting to see one of the coolest places in America right now, which is really cool.
It takes your mind off of the constant reality that then is laid on your family, like the illness, because it's all you think about, it's all you do, even as kids. I mean, even though we were not so much in the direct support role, maybe me a little bit more than you were at that given time, but you can step outside of the world of illness and sickness and have just make incredible memories. And that was, thinking back to it now, that was our last family trip. Yeah. Because he ended up passing later that next year. And that was the last time all 6 of us got to have just our family time. And so it was incredible. And one of the biggest missions of Inheritance of Hope is really we're empowering families to leave a legacy, and to build a legacy for your family. And so being able to have that as a legacy to remember and to see what my dad stood for and who he was and how he was, and what he instilled in each of us, like we were talking before. There are little nuggets that each of us were able to take from him, and then now I'll use that as a motivation to do the things that we're doing in life. It's just really cool.
Yeah, it was very cool to see, a little bit about Dad, and I've talked about my dad a couple times on the podcast, but it was kind of cool. The the song "Live Like You're Dying" by
Tim McGraw.
Is it Tim McGraw? Yeah. And he kind of took that to heart. So whenever he was going through this, he wasn't somebody that would sit down and be like, I don't feel good. And he was somebody that got up and he was like, everybody's helping me, so I got to go out there and help people. He's a very strong Christian, so he went out and every time he was blessed by somebody, he would go and try to bless other people with it. And so whether it was the knowledge that he had from these support groups or people reaching out to him and be like, hey, how are you doing? He would take that energy and bring it right back and push it out. He's like, I'm fine, I love y'all, but I want y'all to be set in the future. But it was very super cool to be able to have Inheritance Hope and support us through that. Being on the working side of that now, how do y'all reach out to these families? So do you get a contact list, or do they reach out to you, or how do you market your program?
That's an awesome question. So it's a couple of different avenues, really. And that's a huge part of what my role has been brought on with our Hope at Home groups. So families served are ones that we kind of interconnect them. So if a family comes and joins a legacy retreat, like Nathan and I had been on, they have the opportunity to then get connected to our Hope at Home groups, or get connected to a Hope at Home weekend in the future if they want to come back, or a Hope Hub. There's a bunch of different offerings that they have. And so think of it like a wheel. In a way, you have legacy retreats, Hope at Home groups, Hope Hubs, and then Hope at Home weekends. And there's arrows that go all the way around. So some can enter into the cycle through Hope at Home groups, and then maybe they make their way to a retreat, or then they get plugged into a Hope at Home weekend or something like that. So there's the interconnectedness that we have through the community where they can get plugged in. But a huge part of my role is really to use opportunities much like this podcast, or even connecting with hospitals or hospice centers, churches, other organizations who are face-to-face meeting with these families or have contact with these families, who can then refer Inheritance of Hope to say, I know this great organization, they offer X, Y, and Z. Why don't you check them out? And all of our services are free for families, even their retreats. I think they have to pay their travel to go for the legacy retreats, but everything is taken care of
once they're there.
And same thing with our Hope at Home groups. They are at no cost to families. So it's as easy as hopping onto a Zoom call at 8:00 at night or 7 o'clock, depending on what time zone you're in, and just being present with a community of individuals. So really, my focus now is really to help connect those referral entities, if you will, connecting with the cancer centers, connecting with maybe the ALS facilities, because there's more than just cancer for terminal diagnoses. And so, to be able to pave that road to where these organizations can say, hey, I know about this great organization who can just be a support network to you at no cost to you.
I really think it's cool that you do more than just cancer, right? Because there's a lot of organizations that are just cancer based. You're like Make-A-Wish, like pretty much, most of the time it's about childhood cancer and stuff like that. They don't really do ALS victims and stuff like that. But that's really cool that you take all of it, all the terminal stuff into consideration, and you never know who you can connect. You might find, Miss Susie, her husband was diagnosed with ALS out in California, and Mr. Bob, his wife, has it down here in Miami, Florida, and they get to talking, and all right, this is how I help so-and-so go through about the day. This is what I do to help calm them down or help them out. Like, it's really cool that you're building a network of support through different types of, realities, pretty much, realities for these people. And that's cool. That's really cool.
we have a diagnosis specific group for ALS too as well. And so, it's really powerful to see these other families who are walking through that. I have the honor of being able to serve and help facilitate our Life After Loss group. And that's with spouses who have lost their loved one to a terminal illness. And there are some widows in there who have had a spouse that have passed from ALS, and some from cancer, and others from, there's a different variety. And so to see those, especially those that are in there who can really bond to that specific illness, and then support one another even after that, to look at what life looks like when you have to pave the road to move forward in life, because life doesn't stop. Once you lose that one you love, it keeps going, and you have to learn what it's like to live life then moving forward. And it's just incredible. Yeah. It's incredible.
It's a really cool organization.
So I'm a very business-minded person. Some of y'all have noticed that through the podcast, and I ask kind of the nitty-gritty questions. Obviously, it's a nonprofit organization, and it is free of charge to the consumer. How do y'all raise your funds? So is that through some kind of fundraiser? Do y'all do
donations?
Donations. Do y'all have government funding? How does that work?
We are completely funded through gifts or charitable gifts, or through donations. There may be a few grants in there, but it really is through direct donations. We have some pretty incredible partnerships too with big name organizations and big individuals, but also from just personal pockets, from people who have either gone through some of what we offer, or have gone through some of our programs, who have felt led to give, or maybe it's others who are connected through churches or through a different community who've been impacted by what we do and who we are, and give in that way. And so we are fully funded by generous donors, and are always looking for generous donors too. I gotta put that plug in there just a little bit.
How might one of our listeners find y'all, and how might they, if they feel empowered to give, how would they do that?
Yeah, so they can go to our website at inheritanceofhope.org. We have a tab specifically for donors. We also have a tab for volunteers. If anyone's interested in, who have maybe been impacted by this, or want to volunteer in some way, there's an opportunity to apply to volunteer. Whether it be at one of our retreats, or to help facilitate some of our Hope at Home groups. Lots of different ways we can get some volunteers in there. And then we're also on social media too, Inheritance of Hope on Facebook, and then inheritance_of_hope on Instagram.
This might be a hard question for you to answer. Like, how many families do you think you guys are like helping out year round? Like, how many people do you think you connect with then?
Oh, that's a good question. And a number I don't know that I have off the top of my head. I know specifically in our groups. I don't want to butcher this.
You don't have to answer.
We at least, I want to say we serve at least 50 in our groups, and that could even be more or less. I could be off on that number.
Are y'all based here in Florida?
We're national.
So
we so even the groups that we have, you get to hop on from anywhere. And
So it's like a video.
Yes, through Zoom.
call.
Yeah, we do them through Zoom. And so that's some of what we found through COVID too, offering it through Zoom. We actually had other individuals who were able to hop on either from, if they couldn't get out of bed, they could hop on from home, or they could hop on from a hospital room even, or in anywhere and everywhere. So we have, we offer our groups in Eastern Standard, like we base it on Eastern Standard Time, but I have individuals all the way on the West Coast that hop onto our group, or in like Minnesota area too, like Midwest, and so we are national.
Yeah, that's big. Sounds big.
Definitely be able to serve all those people. It's an awesome opportunity. I think it's the perfect time to kind of move into our Snap questions, which gets to know more of you personally. We talked about, some of your career growth and how it's affected your personal life. But these questions get to know Nicole Riley as a person. So without further ado, if you could have 3 people at the dinner that are alive, who would your 3 people be?
Tough to narrow down to 3.
See, a lot of times we have guests that can't come up with 3.
Or we have guests that, as soon as we ask that questions, like they're,
like, boom, boom,
oh,
boom.
I heard this. Y'all asked it last episode. Boom, boom, boom. Let's do it.
They're targeted.
Yeah.
I would say number 1, I think goes probably without saying, would be our dad.
Understandable.
Just so much, and so much has changed in life too in 11 years. Like so much that I would ask him now that I didn't know to ask then. That'd be number 1 for sure. And then number 2, okay, I would love to go to lunch with Hoda Kotb. She is a host on the Hoda and Jenna show, or on the Today Show, and she's a big country music lover, but then she also just has this incredible story. She's adopted 2 of her children. She has 2 girls, and she just exudes so much kindness and love, and her outlook on life is just so unique. I would love to just sit and talk with her. Like, you watch her on interviews and it's like, oh, I could sit down and we could be BFFs.
Yeah.
Go get a coffee.
I have a couple of celebrity friends,
Yes.
or I say friends, celebrity people like that. I'd be like, yeah, me and him be tight.
I just admire her so much. And so I would love to just learn from her and just talk with her. And then last, I would say would be The Rock.
Dwayne Johnson.
Okay.
Dwayne Johnson.
I think we've had that one.
Better have a big dinner.
Yeah. Right? Some waffles.
Yeah. His breakfasts are very big.
Yes. He is just like a powerhouse, and he has done so much. Like, he's achieved so much in his career, like so much versatility from
WWE.
Yes, football.
Yeah, I was
and
a
then,
football star.
Yes, and then now and a movie star,
Yeah,
and not
acting.
just like big honcho man movies like Disney. Like
Jumanji or whatever. He was in
Yes.
Jumanji.
Yeah, and even the Tooth Fairy, like when he was the football player, like with the little girl,
Or,
like he's got
game plan too.
Yep.
Yes, yeah. And so he's a girl dad, and I just love watching him with his girls. I'm a girl mom. We have 2 girls, and so just love watching him and yeah.
His clothing line too. I have like 3 or 4 of his shirts, like the
his
Iron,
workout gear.
Iron Paradise stuff. Yeah.
And he's got an energy drink and tequila brand.
Oh god.
Yeah, the Terramana
The
tequila.
Terramana
Yeah.
tequila.
It's good stuff.
It is very good. I love it.
Oh man, that's definitely a really good group. You have Dad. Somebody that we have had people come on and talk about. Past relatives or whatever, and then. What was her name again? The second person?
Hoda Kotb. Her last name is a little hard to pronounce, but Hoda is.
I feel like that's a really cool, interesting 3. You got a little
Bit of
wisdom.
different.
and-
It's a variety.
I love it. Want to get the next one?
Yes. I like this one because you're into this line of work. If we were to give you $100,000, from the Rule 1 Foundation, what would you do with it?
Oh.
It's okay to be a little selfish.
Yeah, you can be selfish with it. Yeah.
I mean, of course, it'd be nice to, use that. But honestly, and I don't say this because I'm employed by that, I would give to certain organizations, Inheritance of Hope being one of them, because I've experienced so much of like what we have to offer and have walked that, and then now get to see that on like the employer side of things. Like, I know how far that could stretch. And I've seen the opportunity, like money like that could provide a weekend retreat for X number of families, like that could provide a retreat in and of itself. And so my husband and I talk a little bit about that. Like, if we win the lottery, like, what would we do? But really, like, I would love to see something like that be used for good in this world to like impact and make a change.
I feel like it's a good amount for a question because, you know, 100 grand is not, I mean, nowadays,
It's not life changing.
yeah, it's not
Right,
life changing, but it could do some good use for you. Some people are like, I pay off my college loans and I do this and I
Yeah.
could do this. And it's really cool some of the answers we get from it.
Yeah,
like
I
it.
mean, it's would always be fun to utilize that personally and invest it.
Just go blow it all on a boat.
But my personal dream, like, I would love to be successful in a way that, like, not to necessarily have it for myself, but I just have this heart that I want to be able to give
it away.
and do, and see just some incredible things done with that.
Yeah.
Because we can't take any of it when we leave.
That's my
Can't.
motto.
There's a Migos song back in the day. Or no, Money in the Grave. Drake, you can't take it with you. You can't bury yourself with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you take it with you, I'm digging you up.
Yeah, facts.
It's like, sorry, Brian, this is mine now.
We ain't gonna get. We're gonna have 2 quarters and a $1 bill in there buried beside me right now.
I'm gonna write IOU on a piece of paper.
There you go.
You know, our final question, it kind of brings episode full circle. You know, we asked you what your number one rule is to live by. Well, this last question kind of brings everything around. If you were to die tomorrow, what would you want people to remember you by?
Your legacy.
Yeah, what would you
My
want your legacy to be?
Which I love that, you know, my motto is kind of stop, reflect, and think what's most important. And I'm so fortunate and thankful to be able to do what I do now because it aligns so fully with what I believe in and the impact that I want to leave this world. Like, it means so much to me to love people well. And, like, as a believer, I believe, you know, I feel like as Christians, we're called to love God with all your heart and mind and love your neighbor as yourself. Like, how can I be a lover of people and how can I be intentional in the way that I love and serve and care for others? My kids, my spouse, my family. That's what I want to be remembered for, is to be intentional and to reflect on the important things in life and see that it's not worth fighting over stupid crap. And it's not worth all of these things that I feel like we can get so caught up in a day-to-day, because life is short and it is so precious. And when it's spent on focusing on those important things and doing things that you love with those that you love and getting to create those memories, getting to create that legacy, like that's what I want to leave.
It's I always say this. It amazes me how similar people's answers are to that question. Like, I want to be remembered for giving and loved, and I want to be like, one of them was like, I just want to be remembered as this guy that helped people out. Like, I think it's so crazy when you see these mass groups of people, right, that identify with certain beliefs and problems and things that, you know, are like kind of crazy. But like, when you talk to these people individual, one by one, I guarantee if you ask that question to everybody in the world, it's going to be some variation of that. I want to be remembered as a good person. I want to be remembered for this. I want to be remembered for that. And I just think it's really cool how that's a really good question that Nate came up with.
I love that you end with that every episode.
And
It kind of brings it all around,
I love
too.
the answers to it.
Yeah.
Because there is hope out there. There are nice people out
Yes.
there. Like,
about to
it's
say, it
not
might
so
have-
crazy.
It might have something to do with the caliber of people we invite on the show
Yeah.
as well.
Yes, well, but that speaks to what you guys are doing too, and just how you're making an impact with this podcast. Like, I love that you reach out to and have so many different walks of life, but then all have such a heart to be able to share and give and do. So kudos to you guys too.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. And if y'all are interested on coming to the show or think you have a cool story to tell, you can always message us on Instagram or TikTok or
Shoot us
however.
an email, rule1podcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, and contact, reach out. If you have any people that you would like to see on the show, also let us know. And I know you mentioned y'all's socials. You want to shout out the Inheritance of Hope stuff and how they could get in contact with you.
Yeah, inheritanceofhope.org on our website. And that really is probably the best landing page for all, like with volunteer links and donation links, or even just learning more about who we are and what we do. We're also on Facebook at Inheritance of Hope and on Instagram at inheritance_of_hope.
Nice.
Awesome. And a cool thing that we do on our social media is we follow back every single one of our guests. And so we'll be following back Nicole. So if y'all want to see her personal stuff, you can go to our following list and we'll have
Probably
her
following
tagged.
Inheritance of Hope as well.
Yeah,
That way
I
on
was thinking
Instagram, so they can
Yeah.
contact there if they need to.
Yeah, a little 2-for-1 action.
Yeah.
But, well, appreciate you coming on, Nicole. It's been an
Absolutely.
awesome episode, and we were glad to be able to kind of get your message out and Inheritance of Hope message out as well.
If I could be back in the saddle again after this little break. Too.
Yeah.
Just a little refresher away from it all.
Welcome back, guys.
Right?
Thank you for having me.
Definitely. And we will see y'all next week.
Peace. We got a good one next week, too. Football.